Number 4.
I had just recently found out about the black-eyed children phenomena and was reminded of this story told to me by my grandfather of an incident that took place sometime in the late 1980s and early 1990s near Sandoval, Illinois. He told me it had been hot the past summer and the heat lingered for months, so he had all the windows and both doors open on his house. Where he was sitting on the porch, he was reading a book because it was too stuffy to be inside. He went inside to make a snack and to get a drink when he heard a knock. This struck him as odd because most people would just call out that knew him, so he figured it might be a vagrant looking for a meal or labour. He lived by the train tracks, so hobos would come from time to time, and I guess it was normal. So he goes to the hall, and 2 kids are standing in the entranceway and call out, "May we come in for a rest? It's a long way home." So he says to them that they're welcome to sit on the porch, but it's too hot inside to be comfortable. He asked if they came from the rails, and they just said, "We need to come in. May we?" From what he said, the kids made him feel peculiar because, 1, they wouldn't look at him directly, and 2, they were very, very clean. My grandfather said that riding the trains was dirty. You got grease on you and coal dust, and sometimes you get cuts on your hands or knees. But these kids, from what he said, were pristine, like they were going to Sunday school or something. They weren't sweating, and their hair was neat, and it struck him as odd because they'd walked in open fields in the middle of the heat, and they would be unkempt or disheveled if they had done that. He asked again if they would like to sit on the porch, and the girl just repeated, "May we come in?" And then she just kept asking, "May we, may we, may we?" over and over again, until my grandfather slammed his hand down and says, "Damn you both, no." The girl stopped speaking, and he said they both just stood quiet until the girl looked at him, eyes black like coal, and said once more, "Mister, may we come in, please?" My grandfather just walked to the kitchen and sat down, not knowing what to do. He said he felt like someone punched him in the stomach. He said that he sat there until his dog came rushing into the house, shaking like a leaf. So, at the end, he never told anyone, chalking it up to heat exhaustion, but he said it troubled him for years. My question is, how far do the stories of the black-eyed children go?
Number 3.
This happened quite recently, maybe 4 to 5 weeks ago. My girlfriend and I stayed up late to watch a movie that came on. Our own child was in bed. It must have been close to midnight. We were halfway through this movie and we heard a knock on the window. I looked at my girlfriend, who didn't seem to notice, and assumed it was the dog on the laminate flooring in the other room. About 15 seconds later, there it was again. I asked her if she heard it again, and she said yes this time. I got up and went to check on the dog. The front room sofa sits underneath the window, and the door to the other room is about 7 feet away. So I got up, took a couple of steps, and I noticed someone move outside. I stood for a second and waited to see if it happened again. It's not unusual to notice the cat on the windowsill outside waiting to come in. I saw it move out the corner of my eye and told my girlfriend someone was outside. She just assumed it may have been a friend who probably had an argument and wanted to crash the night or something. She got up and moved the net curtains and then said that there were kids outside. I told her not to lie, and she said she wasn't. She grabbed the front door keys and opened the porch. We have one of those plastic front doors that have 2 strips of glass running vertical and parallel to each other, so you can't see much unless someone is in front of the glass. But to my surprise, she was right. 2 boys no older than 10, one with blonde hair and one with brown hair, stood in the front door. They didn't speak until the door had been opened. My girlfriend asked if they were okay. The blonde one spoke up and said that they were lost and someone had followed them. My girlfriend asked them where they had come from, but they wouldn't give any specific answers. Just that they were lost and someone had followed them. They noticed the lights on in the house and thought they'd ask for help. They didn't really look at us, just kind of looked away and pointed around when asked questions. The dark-haired one then asked if they could come in. I started to feel a little uneasy about the whole situation and asked if they knew their parents' number. They said they did and wanted to come in to use the phone. I explained we didn't have a phone, which was true because the previous week the cat knocked the phone off the side and broke it. I hadn't got around to replacing it yet. The blonde one then looked up at me, and I swear, his eyes were black. His eyes looked like they were all pupil. He could see I was taken aback and started to get mad and demanded I let him in. Children or adults, I'm not letting anyone I don't know in my house. The darker-haired one piped up and then said to let us use the phone. At this point, we were both terrified, so I shut the front door. I went into the front room and my girlfriend asked me what the fuck was going on. I told her I don't know, but to call the police. They began knocking on the front door and talking in hushed voices to let them in. We got onto the police, and a few minutes later they left. The police came back and we told them what had happened. Just to state, my girlfriend and I are both foster carers. We are well known to the local police through some of the children we have had. I don't think they knew what to do. At first, I think they thought we were joking with them and not telling them what had really happened. But then they saw that we were both being serious. They did a check on the area and no kids had been reported missing and they hadn't found anyone. My only suggestion is they ran off into the nature reserve, but the police weren't willing to check. I couldn't sleep for a week. I installed a security camera outside the house and a sensor light. The two boys, like I said, looked no older than 10, one with blonde hair and one with dark hair. The blonde one wore jeans, scruffy trainers and a blue t-shirt. The black-haired one wore darker jeans, a white t-shirt with a logo on it. They were both white, didn't look pale, just like normal kids. Their eyes were like nothing I'd ever seen. My girlfriend still worries about it and makes me double check the doors locked when we go to bed. I happened to Google it and came across this and I thought I'd share this story. I have truly never been so scared in my life. What started out as innocent became something more serious. My girlfriend talked about it recently and said that she felt like something was wrong with them. She felt like she had to show them she wasn't scared and couldn't figure out why they kept asking for permission to come into the house. They didn't seem to be worried that something may have been following them. Also, we asked their names, and they just ignored us.
Number 2.
So, last night I was in my living room reading some stories about the black-eyed children and the real-life men in black. It was around 2:30 in the morning and my dog went to the door like he had to go out. I started to get up and he started growling at the door. He has never growled at anything in his life. He's only 6 months old. Then my other dog jumped up onto the couch, trembling and whining. She's a year old. Needless to say, this unnerved me, since I was reading about creepy stuff and was already a little freaked out. So I just sat back on the couch and held my older dog, trying to calm her down. Then a knock came on the door. Usually, my dogs go wild, barking and whining excitedly because they love people, but my 6-month-old puppy ran away from it and came over by me. At this point, my heart was racing, and I was just terrified. All the lights in my house were off, and the curtains were drawn. I don't have a peephole, so I peeked out through the blinds of the window behind me that overlooked the porch. There were 2 boys standing there. One looked to be around maybe 5. He was really little, and the other one was about 10, I'd say. They had their heads down and were wearing winter clothes, heavy jackets. I thought this was weird because it's in the middle of summer. Then they both turn and look up at me. I don't have a bulb on my porch light, so I couldn't see their faces, but they looked directly at the window. This freaked me out even more, so I moved away from the window and just sat on my couch. I couldn't believe that this was happening. I had heard that if you knew about them, then they would visit you, and I just kept trying to convince myself that they were just some young kids playing a prank or something, that this wasn't really happening. However, this felt very real. Then one of them spoke. It sounded like it may have been the older one.
"Ma'am, can you let us in? It's really cold out here and my brother is hungry."
I didn't move, and I didn't reply. I was immediately alarmed because I had no idea how they knew I was a ma'am. I just sat there on my couch. The voice sounded void of emotion and a lot more calmer and somehow older than the little person talking. What the hell would two young kids be doing out at this time of night anyway? Plus, it's June in Alabama. It isn't cold by any means. I felt this overwhelming sense of dread and knew if I opened the door, something awful would happen. I had read stories and I thought, nope, not going to answer the door, fuck this. It was really weird though, because no matter how scared I was and how much none of this made sense, I almost felt compelled to go to the door, like I had an urge to help them. I suppressed it the best I could and ignored them anyway. Then the same voice said,
"Ma'am, please let us in. I saw you through the window. I know you're there. It will only take a moment."
I was like, okay, what the fuck? A moment? What kids say that? I was frozen in fear and just refused to answer them at all. I waited for them to go away and didn't dare look out my window because I just knew that they were right next to it and would be staring back at me with pitch black eyes. Then, after a few seconds of silence, they started pounding on my window, and I heard the same voice again.
"Let us in, please, it's cold. We have to call our mum. She'll be worried if we don't call her."
I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. It sounded just like what happened in all the stories I'd been reading. At this point, I was almost in tears. I was so freaked out. My heart felt like it was going to bust out of my chest. I still stayed silent and didn't answer the door. I just sat back against the arm of my couch and held my legs up to my chest. There was no way I was answering that fucking door. I stayed that way for about half an hour until I was sure that they were gone and everything was quiet. My dogs at this point ran into my room and I had to go get them out and hold them because I was just terrified and needed some kind of comfort. I never saw these kids' eyes. I have no idea for sure if they were black-eyed children, but I definitely believe that they were. I grabbed my phone and called my friend, who had suggested I read the stories, and woke her up and begged her to come stay the night with me. After I told her what happened, she agreed right away. About 15 minutes later, she still wasn't here. I started to get worried, because she only lives on the next street over. It should have taken her not even 5 minutes to get here. Then, at that point, I saw headlights in my driveway and looked out the window. I saw her get out of the car and run to my door, banging on it. I let her in immediately, and she was crying, and had this terrified look on her face and said,
"You aren't going to believe this, but I swear to God, I just encountered the two kids you told me about."
She said she was at a stop sign and checked her phone for a second when this kid knocked on her window. It startled her, so she looked up and strangely, the streetlights were out, so she couldn't see his face, but there was another younger kid behind him. She cracked the window open, already apprehensive, and said,
"Can I help you?"
And the kid said,
"Give us a ride."
in a demanding, overly confident voice for a child. She didn't say anything, and the kid stepped toward her car, and he was close enough now that she noticed he had jet black eyes, wall-to-wall black, no white. She said she wanted to drive away immediately, but felt like she was being pulled into his stare, almost opening her door before she snapped out of it. She gunned the gas pedal and went straight to my house. We stayed up the rest of the night together. According to the stories, they usually pay you more than one visit, so I'm going to take a shit ton of melatonin and knock myself out tonight to try and sleep right through, in case they decide to come again. Believe me or not, this really happened, right here in Huntsville. Lock your doors and windows and ignore any child that comes to your door asking for help, especially if it's at night.
Number 1.
My fiance and I decided to go out to dinner and on a little double date with my parents. We live in the upstairs apartment of their home, so we usually all carpool to save gas when we go out to do stuff as a group. We're all together, and my mum decides she wants to go check out this local cemetery. I'd rather not name it because it would give away my location, but it's in the west of Georgia area, right by the Alabama state line. She had heard of it from co-workers she trusted, who told her family stories about how creepy this place was. I got a knot in my stomach as soon as she mentioned it. I just knew in my gut that we did not need to go there, but I didn't want to be that wet rag, so I just ignored the little voice of caution and said, "Sure, let's do it." My fiance was slightly more skeptical of paranormal things at the time than he is now, and my dad is a pretty big skeptic who doesn't believe in ghost activity, no shadow people or any of that, just basic religious angels or demons, as he's a Christian. My mum likes things for the creep factor, but at the same time, didn't really buy into stuff like that in a realistic level. We Google the address, punch it into the GPS, and get going. The GPS tells us it'll take us about 20 minutes to get there, but it ends up taking us an hour. For some reason, the time on the GPS just keeps steadily going up the closer we get. It was all country back roads, and some of them felt like the exact same as the road before, and so on. I can't explain it in words, really, but it felt like we were repeating the roads, when the road names were different and the GPS showed us in different parts of the map. We finally reached the address, and there's nothing. It's just an empty road intersection. The moment we hit the destination flag on the GPS goes black for a moment. And then, when the screen comes back on, it says that we're 3 miles away again. We're all kind of what the fucking because we all saw the same thing, but we brush it off and follow the new directions. The new directions take us down the same roads we'd already been on, but I swear to you, no lie at all here, the same directions brought us to a different place. Same thing happens. We reach the flag on the screen flashes black, comes back, and a new direction saying we're a few miles away again. This happens a total of 4 times before we just give up and go in the opposite direction of where the GPS says to go. This brings us to a shady looking little convenience store. As my dad pulls into the parking lot to get gas, the headlights flash over the woods behind the store. Nothing there, just woods. My anxiety is growing in epic proportions now, and I just want to get the fuck home at this point. We get gas, and then reroute the GPS to get us home and turn around. The headlights fall over the exact same spot that they had only a few moments earlier, where all 4 of us saw full thick woods. The woods are gone, and there's a clearing now, with a very old gated cemetery, and the gates have been broken and are open a couple of feet. This cemetery was not there a few minutes prior. All 4 of us have acknowledged that we have no fucking clue how it just appeared. My mum, for whatever reason, I don't know, drives up to the gates and puts the car in park. I'm panicking at this point and trying to get her to turn around and leave. I swear I could feel the energy radiating off this tiny cemetery, and it was making me physically ill. Then I see something just inside the gates, and I can't make out what it is at first, but when I made it out, I almost started crying. Clear as day, there was a young girl, looking maybe 6 or 7 years old, standing just inside the gates. She was in a ratty, torn little grey-white nightgown and looked very tattered, like she'd been living in the woods or something. She had the sweetest face, albeit filthy and scratched up, and my maternal instincts were going into overdrive despite my fear. I was so conflicted. On the one hand, half of me was screaming to get away. On the other, I felt like I was being compelled to get out of the car and go to her. All I can describe it as was like a voice in my head telling me to go take her hand and lead her back to the car. Just go help her. You have to help her. You have to take her home with you. She needs you. I cannot even begin to describe how malicious the voice in my head sounded. I have chills upon chills just recalling it. Just as I was reaching for the door handle to go help her, I felt like I was in some sort of hypnotic state, like I couldn't control myself. She did something that snapped me out of it. She raised one hand to me, palm up, and curled her fingers like a come here motion. As she did it, I realized her eyes were jet black, no white, no iris, and she grinned at me with the most terrifying smile I have ever seen. My panic mode went into overdrive, and I literally started pleading with my mother to leave. I was fighting tears. I was so afraid of whatever this thing was. I just knew in my gut that it was not anything I wanted any part of. When she finally turned the car back on and put it in reverse, this look of absolute rage crossed the child's face before she just disappeared. When my mum turned around and started driving away, we all noticed that when we looked behind us, the cemetery was gone again. The four of us barely ever speak of it because we're all so dumbfounded by whatever happened. It was a year and a half ago, and I only got the courage to tell my fiancé about a few weeks ago. I've thought long and hard on it, and I don't know if it was a demon or just some malevolent entity, but what I do know is that it was not a little girl, but something else taking the form of something that the entity somehow knew would affect me, as I have a really big soft spot for children who need help. Anyway, moral of the story is, if you're trying to find something that supposedly is haunted, and it takes you 4 or 5 tries to even find the damn place, and the whole experience of looking for it is really fucked up and unexplainable, you should probably just go home. And don't go play with little dead girls or demon girls, or whatever the fuck she or it was. G'day mates, it's B-Buster here. Well, black-eyed children can go and fuck themselves if they ever show up on my doorstep, and I'm a social worker, so that means something. I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. It would be awesome if you could support the channel by liking the video, sharing, commenting, and subscribing if you're new. Don't forget to follow me on my social media and to send me your stories on my email, all of which I'll put in the description below. We're starting to warm up as well, guys, to the 200,000 subscriber mark here at The Hive, and I just want to say thank you all so much for your continued support again. Never in my wildest dream would I have ever thought I would be at almost 200,000 subscribers on my channel. You all are just amazing, and I'm just so thankful that you're all here and sharing the spooks with me. So yeah, thanks again, guys, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, guys, I'll see you mates in the next one.